So, Li Hwee, I wanted to ask you about what is this so-called ASEAN way. A lot of people speaks about the ASEAN way, but it's not very clear what is the meaning of ASEAN way. Can you tell us, please, what is the meaning of ASEAN way?
ASEAN way, I think, refers to the way decisions are made within ASEAN, which is very much based on consultation and consensus. So this is one of the key principles that everything is taken basic on. And I think the other words that are always associated with ASEAN is that we have what we call quiet diplomacy. Things are being discussed in a very sort of diplomatic manner. So we rely on diplomacy, rely on consultation and consensus in order to get some sort of agreement. And then the other key thing about ASEAN is always that we say that if we can't agree, let's put it aside and not to force the issue, but to come back at it at a later time when opportunity is, when the timing is right. So we do not force and say that we must reach certain, so we agree to disagree in some way and then come back at a later time. So I think giving time and the opportunity to move on in a way that is comfortable for all.
And so Southeast Asia is a region which is embedded in a larger context, which is the Pacific. So I would like to know what are the challenges that you can see from this situation, that Southeast Asia is part of the broader Pacific geographic area, and perhaps this affects in the way Southeast Asia can perceive itself in a kind of autonomous way.
Well, the whole idea of ASEAN is really to try and manage this, the relationship in the broader Asia Pacific, in the Pacific region, how to bring the major powers together. And as I think ASEAN's role in this broader Asia Pacific is really to play that role of a convening power. Because within the Asia Pacific, the major powers, China, Japan, and China, US, do not necessarily trust each other. So you need a small organization like ASEAN, which doesn't threaten anyone, or doesn't, the big powers do not fear ASEAN. So because of that, ASEAN can actually play important convening role to bring together the different bigger powers within the Asia Pacific context. And that's where I think the idea of centrality of ASEAN has become so important within the broader Asia Pacific.
This is a seminar on comparative regional integration, and one of the things we want to do is to learn lessons from each other. So if I were going to ask you, what are the lessons that we can learn from ASEAN, and what are the lessons that ASEAN can learn from the European Union, what would be your answer?
My answer would be that when we look at regional integration, whether you look at it in ASEAN or the EU, I think there are certain things we have to keep in mind that we should not become too ideological. I think to keep to the fact that pragmatic step-by-step approach is very important. At the same time, I think leadership and drivers and champions, so-called regional, you need to have leadership, we need to have champions, but leadership not necessarily by size or power, but really leadership by issues. So this, I think we can learn that the leadership role, for instance, in the EU doesn't need to be always coming from France or Germany. But really, if you look at ASEAN, we have what we call functional leadership, leadership by issues. The other thing that we do want to come back to I think that's been discussed a lot, the institutions matters. But the kind of institutional design must really take into account what are the goals, the problems that you want to solve. And I think these are some of the things we can learn from each other when we look at how the EU manage its problems or manage the problems within its region and what ASEAN does within its region.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.